Let's talk to Phil in North Carolina. Phil, you're live with Eric and Trae. What would you like to talk about?
Oh, Eric, what's up, man?
Hey.
Trae Crowder. I'm a big fan, man. I saw the diner thing too, so
Thank you.
Very, very big fan of your work. Grew up in a small North Carolina town, so I can relate. But
right on.
Yeah, Eric. So I was calling back. Yeah, I was calling back from last week, and gotta say, man, not too happy with you, Eric.
No. Well, let's talk about
I thought
it.
we had a good conversation last week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got off the call and talked to a friend and said, hey, you know, I talked to these two heathens today, Eric and V, and it was a great conversation. I go on about my week. I said, hey, let me check on my two favorite atheists, Eric and V, and I go to the YouTube page, and you are clutching your head in exasperation. V is aggressively rolling her eyes.
Oh, are you talking about the thumbnails?
Yeah, man.
Oh.
Wasn't too happy about that.
I don't put together the thumbnails, man. That is our crew, but appreciate the feedback. I'm definitely like we took a whole bunch of stock pictures, and that's what they use for the thumbnails. It says here that you want to continue the conversation. I'm happy to do that. But let's catch everybody up. So last week you called in because you heard me use a term, cafeteria Christian. And for people who don't know that term, when I was a Christian, I used to get really, really mad at people who would just kind of pick and choose. They'd cherry pick all of their favorite parts of the Bible and leave all the like not so good stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pejorative, and it's something that is interesting kind of seeing from the other side. And so you called in last week wanting to talk about cafeteria Christians. And so you want to continue that conversation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I wanted to also, because I wanted to be sure that I had and clear up something really quickly with an ad populum claim, which is what I kind of started with in saying that 85% of the world believes in a God. And then it kind of went into a direction of what's ad populum. And I wanted to be clear and try to understand what that meant. And I don't think that was what I was saying. So what I think you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, thought I was saying was because 85%, or let's just say the vast majority of people believe in a God, Buddha, whoever, Jesus, that therefore there is a God, or therefore that was a good thing, or it was a positive, and that's not what I was saying at all. What I was saying was that in spite of an overwhelming lack of evidence, and we all have access to this evidence, to facts and things that would clearly prove most religions wrong or false, at least a majority of them, that despite that a lot, if not the 85% or the majority of people still choose to believe or are susceptible to believing. So that was more of a commentary on like the human condition and not whether or not there was a God or not.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. And yeah, I think that even if you didn't mean that, talking about ad populum is good for the people who are watching. Trae, I know that I've come across that, people saying, well, everybody else believes it, so it must be true. Have you ever come across that?
Yeah, but I mean, everybody at different points in time. It's funny. The first thing that popped into my mind was actually a scene from Men in Black, that philosophical touchstone where he's talking. Tommy Lee Jones is talking to Will Smith's character, and he says something like, 1,000 years ago, everybody knew that the Earth was the center of the universe, and before that, everybody knew that the Earth was flat. And this morning, you knew that you were alone in the universe. Imagine what you're going to know tomorrow. And I butchered it, but it's something like that. But I mean, a whole lot of people have believed a whole lot of things, almost universally ever since we crawled out of the muck, however long ago. And I don't feel that necessarily really means, much of anything. And as far as I do appreciate what Phil's saying about, in spite of evidence to the contrary, we persist in our belief because that's what faith is. Because I can relate to that just as a college football fan. I'm a Tennessee football fan, and every single year, there's overwhelming evidence that we are not going to be worth a damn. And yet I persist in my belief that that we will, get to the promised land someday. So, I can sympathize with that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like that necessarily makes a real difference how many people believe something.
Agreed. So, Phil, with that clarified, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, really. Well, I wanted to kind of talk about the Christianity that I embraced. I mentioned I spent about 10, 15 years as an agnostic. I used to say, well, I don't know, and I'm okay with that. And that's still true to a large degree, but I stumbled on this John Shelby Strong Bishop dude on YouTube. And I wanted to quickly talk about that perspective of Christianity, which I think is a more honest perspective, which is like one of the foundations that I would say gave the evangelicals would probably say it gave me the Holy Ghost, but to give you those, tingly feelings, it was like, man, I can get on board with this. And that was that Jesus was Jesus was in a very barbaric, tribal society, and that his decision to love those who wanted to do him wrong, love those that were different, was radical, revolutionary, so much so that people talked about it for about 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. They began to write about it, elevated it as God and God-like. So that was one of the foundational things that really didn't talk about like any talking snakes and burning bushes, but was foundational to this perspective. And I thought something that other Christians that are more evangelical and more judgmental and all the bad stuff could get on board with, that would lead us to a place of well-being.
So here's the thing. I wouldn't classify it as barbaric, just because you have these societies, these civilizations that were already growing. You already had the Roman government that was there and established. You already had a Jewish community there, but that's kind of nitpicking. I think that the piece that I'm really kind of zooming in on here is it sounds like you're being very pragmatic about it. It would be helpful if this was the case, right?
Well, it's like that. Well, right. I mean, I think even if someone doesn't believe, it would be, if what you're saying is, it would be great if that side of Christianity, the whole like love thy neighbor, and that whole part of what Jesus was about was a bigger thing amongst evangelicals and all of that, then I 100% agree. I mean, I think that would be great. It's just that, what's that famous quote? Is Gandhi, and maybe it's apocryphal, where he's like, I love your Christ, but I don't know about your Christians because they're so unlike your Christ, or something like that. And obviously not everybody is, but it's just, I've known so many who are. But if that was like, more of a explicit driving factor in the way a lot of Christians lead their lives, high profile Christians anyway, the ones in the public arena, then we would all be better off. But to me, other Christians should be, and I assume are, just as upset about that kind of hypocrisy when they see it as anybody else is.
Yeah. And just to kind of dovetail in and go from there, Phil. So I think we're all in agreement that, taking certain things that are beneficial and going with them is something that we'd all like to do. But I'm kind of more interested right now in what is true. If something is beneficial, does that make it true?
Well, and this is when we get into those, like I see on those debates about defining words true and those very, very deep things, because I think even if you take Jesus out of that, but my framework is people want to believe in this shit for whatever reason. I think it satisfies some social and some very personal internal things that we seem to be born with. And again, that does not make it right. But my thing is working in the framework. Last week, V said, well, her hope, and I don't know if you agree with this, but her hope or the goal was that people would not believe in God. And I found that very interesting, because my thing is, my hope or goal is that we can agree on certain things to live together that's inclusive as we can be, and then to try to move forward. And I don't care if you believe in a cabbage, but if you believe in gay rights and you believe that and that brings you closer to believing that women are equal, who cares? You know, who cares what we believe in? And I get that there is a potential to believe in some bullshit. But if we use science and we approach that, we still say that we honor our traditions, why would you care that I'm a Christian? You know, and so my thing is, I get the true thing, but my thing is people with the framework that people believe in this anyway at a vast majority of who we are now and who we've always been. How can we move within that framework, which seems to be a constant of the human condition? Then how do we move forward? Because I just don't see an atheist world. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Go ahead.
Real quick, if it's okay, Eric, because I just want to say, like, I feel for the you were saying, like, as far as I'm concerned, as long as you don't have a problem with gay rights and, you know, equality for women and that type of thing, then, you know, why does it matter to you if I'm a Christian? And I just want to say for the record, it doesn't to me. Like that, those things are that's where my issue comes into it, is when people use the Christian faith as like the foundation for persecuting others or restricting the rights of others. That is the entirety of my problem with it. If you are down with, you know, progressivism and everything and are a Christian, I, for one, I'm not gonna take any issue with that or try to talk you out of it or whatever. Because the first things that's what's important to me too. Like those are my priorities as opposed to what any individual, you know, believes about a thing. But Eric, I would be very interested to hear how you were going to respond to that also. Yeah.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you saying that. It's kind of interesting. I feel like we're talking about two different things here. You know, at what point is someone doing so much damage that we should step in and be like, "Hey, this is wrong," right? And I think everyone in this call is in agreement that when somebody is using their beliefs and using their whatever religion they're in to damage and hurt and restrict the rights of other people, that's wrong. And I think that is absolutely, you know, when we should step in. That said, this is a call-in show. People want to talk about what they believe and why. And because of that, I was called out really early on, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And that is that I was saying essentially what you're saying, right? If they're not hurting anybody, then let's be allies in creating this world. And just as an aside, I think we do live in a secular world, right? Largely, the more we can keep religion out, the more people will have the ability to read in where they are, but no one will have the ability to oppress others. But what I want to focus on here is when I got called out for being condescending. They said, "Eric, why would you be okay with someone, you know, believing something without good reason?" And I said, "Well, they're not hurting anybody." You know, and if everybody just believed and that belief is what kept the world going in a good way, then why not? And the response was something that just rattled me. And the response was, because Eric, you're assuming that people are too dumb and lack the ability to think for themselves. And there's the assumption there that if they just believe something because it works for them, then you're not giving them the ability, the opportunity to make an informed decision with as much information as possible. And again, I'm not passing that on to anybody in this conversation, but what I'm saying is I do feel, after that conversation that I had, I do feel like I want to give you the best information possible, Phil, because I do think I have good reason for what I believe. And if I don't, I want to hear it from you. And if you don't, I want to point it out so that you can have better information going forward. And so what does it matter if it's true? It matters because I think that you have it in you, Phil, to have all of this information. And even if there was no God, you would still have a reason to be a good person. And I think that should be true for everyone. Give them the tools so that they can make an informed decision. But I don't think that I should make the decision for them. And so, yes, I would not stop somebody who is just not hurting anybody and doing their own thing. And I think we can be allies, and I think we can build an amazing society. But that said, I do want to call out when I think something is not right here, because I don't want you to be looking at the world through a perspective that might have some cracks in it. That's where other things come into play, right? I met a whole bunch of spiritual atheists. They don't believe in gods, but they believe in crystal healing and they believe in chakras and all of this stuff. And I've met people damaged by it. And I had someone close to me who died because instead of choosing actual medical care, they chose to go with the woo. And so after that, I thought to myself, I should have challenged him on it, because maybe he would still be alive today. And maybe there would be less people who are anti-vax. And there will be less people who fall into these, flat earth loopholes, because there's a crack somewhere in that line of thinking. And I want to point it out. It's not a place of seeing you as being some bad person, Phil. It's wanting to give you the tools so that you can do better too.
I think that is an assumption. And again, agnostics, atheists, see, we talked about is and ought last week, like, what is and what ought. And what I was saying was that people see because I don't think it's I don't think it's ignorance. I don't think people go, oh, well, I didn't know that. I mentioned taking my friends and family through Exodus 21. It was nobody thought the thing I thought and went, wow, that's fucked up about slavery. Really? I didn't know the Bible said that. They all made it right. And again, there may be a small percentage with all of the information we have right now. There may be a small percentage of people. You talk to them every weekend, but people will dig in. And I don't think it's a question of, oh, they just don't have the evidence. I think that religion satisfies some very deep things personally and also socially that we can see. You get to sing in the choir and dress up and all that good stuff on Sunday, but there are some personal things that we seem to be susceptible and then therefore willing and eager to believe in a God that, working in that framework, that to me just seems to be what is and what always has been. I would like for that to be different. I'd like for more people to be like us. But my point is, there's not a model right now that's popular that says, I can get this personal and social benefits, but I can also apply science and logic. My point is this perspective that I believe is this John Shelby Strong dude, and I keep mentioning his name. I don't know him. I just like what he says. I think that's a model that just most Christians could get involved. It does check those personal social boxes. You still get to do that, but you don't have to engage people.
Hold on. I want to push back because I think we agree. I think that you're still pushing on the pragmatic point of it. We're not here to fight you on that. I'm again, the pragmatic piece isn't where the argument is. The argument is it true? Because I think you should have good reasons for what you believe is true. And I do think we do have models. Have you ever joined a Rotary Club or been there? Have you ever, been a part of a group that has a fan base? Have you ever? Those are communities.
Does the Rotary Club do? I mean, and that's where we go, because I think there is how we live. Because
and then not only that, but we work to legislate our moral views, right? Everything that we see, we as a society go, this is wrong. We should make this illegal. And we do, because that is our attempt to legislate what we believe is moral. And it changes over time. That is a secular way of approaching it. I don't think that the statement that there is no atheist model is wrong.
Well, no, I wasn't saying that at all. I'm just saying, and I'm talking more about this framework. And I know, this is the last thing I'll say. I think religion is like a package deal, right? I think it's like cable. You get the good stuff, but you get this bad stuff too. You get ESPN and HBO, but then you got to watch somebody sell swords and precious crystals 24 hours a day on some channel you never did. But my thing is that I just don't think there's a model to say I can apply science, I can apply logic. This was a model, and it still checked off those boxes. The reason why I would say I'm Christian now and not agnostic or atheist, I still embrace much of that logic and reasoning, is because it feels a little bit better. I do not know why. Maybe it's my upbringing. I don't know. But I think that it feels better, and it does no harm.
Yes, it does harm. Phil, hold on. Well, stop. Wait. It does harm.
Whoa.
It does.
Again, not disbelief. How does, and you're saying my belief is John Shelby Strong perspective does harm? Or you're saying Christianity in general? Because I'm not saying Christianity in general. We would agree that most things in the Bible are not true.
Okay. And again, it seems like you keep doubling back on the pragmatic piece. I don't care whether or not it's effective. I care whether or not it's true. You know, and if it makes you happier, I could tell you, Phil, I'm going to give you $1 million tomorrow. You can be really happy today. You know, Phil, tomorrow at 3 p.m., I'm going to wire transfer it to you, and you're going to have $1 million in your bank account. It'll change your life. You know, I bet you'd be really, really happy about that. But doesn't it matter whether or not I'm actually going to do it?
Yeah, and I think we may be talking about two different things, because I hold both things beside each other. Yeah, because I think what's also true is that people want their God. And
I don't care. Yeah, essentially, I think. I think that no, it's okay, and I'm trying to, because we have other calls that we want to get to. I think that a place to go from here is look up the pragmatic theory of truth, because I think that's where you're falling. And just to clarify, I'm come from the correspondence theory of truth, right? I think that what is true is what corresponds to reality. And I think that you're coming at it from a what is useful and what is helpful or what feels good. And that I think is what the core of where we're disagreeing. But if you look into it and want to call back and talk about that, I'd be happy to. Does that sound okay?
Hey, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. And also, hey, again, Trae, I'm a big fan, man. I appreciate you guys taking the call.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate you. Eric, it's all right, real quick. The sort of part of what I think Phil was talking about with the like community aspect of churches, you're talking about it fulfills social needs and things like that. And being from a small town, I know that a lot of small towns are very much built around churches and that type of thing. But just purely an anecdote here, a personal anecdote, but in the tiny town I grew up in, my dad raised me, and my dad was a godless heathen. That's a big part of why I am too, obviously. And my dad never went to church. Everybody knew that he didn't go to church. Everybody knew he wasn't down with all that at all. But my dad was a real good dude and a funny guy and a likable guy, and everybody liked him. And he didn't need the church or the Bible to be a good dude or to know how to treat other people. You know, It's like, I don't either. But when my dad passed away in 2013, and when he died, first of all, the funeral home in my little town was packed with people. And after it was over, and I'm from a very poor family. We never had, any money. When it was over, I went into the funeral director's office, and I said, okay, so, how are we going to handle this? Because I was the one in charge, the eldest son. How are we going to handle this? How can I set up a payment plan? How much do I owe you or whatever? And he said, you don't owe us anything. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, everybody chipped in and they covered it. So you guys are good. You don't have to worry about it. And so, people from all the different churches in town chipped into that to pay for a godless heathen's funeral. You know what I mean? I just don't. Yeah. I don't buy the necessity ultimately of any of this type of stuff. Whether you're on that side of it or this side of it, I feel like at the end of the day, it just comes down to who you are and how you act and how you treat people and that type of thing. And I don't think it really matters as much as it seems like it does to other people.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to being a good person, I don't think that any side has a stranglehold on it. Nobody owns being a good person. And I agree with you there. I think if people want to call in and have the other conversation, I'm happy to. But I absolutely see myself as an ally when it comes to things that we agree with. So I'll give you an example. You said you're in Southern California. Did you hear about the person who recently drowned up in Piru Lake?
No.
No, there was an actress who drowned up in Piru Lake. And that is actually...
I'm sorry. Yes, I do know what you're talking about. I didn't recognize the name of the lake when you said that. It was Naya Rivera, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Piru Lake is like that. And there have been a number of drownings. And actually, when I lived up in that community, there was a little girl who drowned in that lake. And I didn't know the family. And I was an atheist. And we got the community together and we did a car wash and we fundraised enough to help pay for her funeral because the family couldn't. You know, and it doesn't matter if people were joining from the church or whatever. People saw a good thing happening and they went, no, we want to go and help right there. And I agree. I just think that, I think they're two different conversations, but I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.